The Kyiv delegation taking part in talks in Geneva with the U.S. over the weekend isn't even home yet. But already, Russia is rejecting the European counterproposal to Donald Trump's 28-point peace plan to end the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, top EU leaders, meantime, are voicing optimism blended with caution about the newly revised proposal after the first draft was seen as highly favorable to Russia.
EU leaders meeting in Angola on the sidelines of a summit with the African Union say they are committed to providing Ukraine with diplomatic, military, and economic support. Earlier, CNN spoke to the European Union's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, who made reference to the White House plan that, among other things, called for Ukraine to cede territory under its control.
If Russia could conquer Ukraine, they would have already done so. So to offer them something that they even haven't conquered militarily is, offering something on top of what they already have, or what they have achieved on the battlefield. We shouldn't fall into the traps to discuss all what Ukraine should give away, but bring the discussion back to the territory what Russia should concede, because they have started this war and they are doing the killing.
The U.S. president hinted at big progress in the Geneva talks on a post on social media, saying that something good may just be happening in Geneva.
Meanwhile, the war continues. Russia attacked energy facilities across Ukraine overnight, leaving tens of thousands of homes without power. Russia has been regularly striking Ukraine's energy grid, leaving the country without heat and power during the cold months.
Let's bring in CNN State Department reporter Jennifer Hansler. Jennifer, how much optimism is there that this peace plan, obviously it's being revised, started off as this 28-point peace plan that is highly favorable to Russia, even with revisions? How much optimism is there that this potentially could lead to an end in hostilities, even a temporary one?
Well, we're hearing a remarkable amount of optimism coming out of Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who led that U.S. delegation in Geneva yesterday. He came out and spoke to the press twice during the course of those meetings in Switzerland. The first time he said that it had been the best meeting, in his opinion, since the start of the discussions at the beginning of this administration with Ukraine on this matter. After those meetings wrapped up, he said there had been a tremendous amount of progress. However, he did stress that there is still work to be done. He would not go into details about what gaps remain, but he said that they would continue these intensive discussions. Listen to how he described this ongoing, evolving peace plan.
There were items that we were discussing as part of the original 28, or it evolved. This is a living, breathing document. Every day with input, it changes. I can tell you that the items that remain open are not insurmountable. We just need more time than what we have today. I honestly believe we'll get there.
Now, there are indications, though, that there have been changes from that controversial 28-point plan. We saw a joint statement put out last night between Ukraine and the U.S. following those discussions. They said that there had been an updated and refined peace framework. Of course, that 28-point plan that came out in the public last week was widely criticized by European allies, by members of Congress, because of the concessions that it was calling for Ukraine to make. Among those were significant territorial concessions, a limitation on Ukraine's military size, a de facto U.S. recognition of parts of Ukraine that had been seized by Russia, which of course would be a complete 180 from longstanding U.S. policy not to recognize territory that was seized militarily. So that came under a lot of criticism and a lot of concern among Kyiv and the European capitals about what that would mean moving forward. We have seen now some steps back to try to ease that up, but of course these conversations are ongoing, and there is the Russia factor of it. They also have to agree to this. This is something that Rubio also acknowledged. This is going to come down to the leaders of the U.S., of Ukraine, and of Russia. Of course, Moscow is indicating they are not going to also give up any concessions, especially when the 28-point plan was so favorable to them to begin with. So we're going to see what happens here. I should note, guys, also, President Trump last week had indicated he was giving Ukraine until Thursday to accept any sort of plan. Rubio yesterday suggested that timeline could shift here. Guys.
All right, Jennifer Hansler, live for us there. Thank you so much. Right, Russian forces are taking advantage of gaps in Kyiv's defenses to edge forward in a number of key arenas, including Zaporizhzhia and Pokrovsk. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that Russia has concentrated more than 150,000 troops in the eastern city of Pokrovsk alone in an attempt to finally take control of it after fighting for months.
CNN military analyst and retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton joins us now. So, Cedric, it has been a bit of political whiplash, I would say, and geopolitical whiplash on the global stage over the last few days. The president just over the weekend chastising Ukraine once again for what he says is not being grateful and thankful enough to the United States, giving them an ultimatum until Thursday. And now you have Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio coming.
Fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.